Thank you. Thank you, Scott. First of all, I just want to welcome everybody to our tip-off / media event. Looking forward to, obviously, an exciting season, and it's nice to see so many familiar faces in the room. Just a few remarks to open. First of all, I want to welcome our 9 West Coast Conference men's basketball coaches here. I know it's a busy time of the year with practice already going on and exhibition games and others, contests coming up, so we appreciate you taking the time to visit with everybody today. I want to welcome the administrators and media relations folks from our campuses that are in attendance. They've done a lot of work over the past couple of years to transform what they're doing on campus to play into this whole digital media space that involves things like YouTube, and I think the impact of their work is being felt mightily, so thank you. Members of the media that are in attendance, of course, we welcome you and hope that you'll leave here with a lot of interesting stories because we think that we have a lot to tell here in our conference. And lastly, but certainly not least, we want to welcome all the West Coast Conference fans that are watching live internationally on WCCSports.com and YouTube.com today. An event like this doesn't come together without a lot of hard work from a lot of people. And first, I want to thank YouTube for their vision and their willingness to be a partner with us in bringing this event, doing it a little differently to their campus, specifically Frank Golding and his staff, who have been a big part of this. And I'll tell you a little bit more about what the future holds for that partnership in a second. I want to welcome Barry Tompkins, Sean Farnham, and Jeff Lampy, who are here helping us out with some of the interviews with the coaches. Thank you, gentlemen, for your presence. And last, certainly not least, I want to thank our staff, Jeff Turiel and Scott Lakem, who really did all the work on this. I just said, hey, why don't we do it? And they ran with it. So thanks, guys. I referenced the partnership with YouTube previously. Today, this event marks the kickoff of a partnership with YouTube that will see West Coast Conference content, championships, shoulder content, and select live game content carried on YouTube internationally and brought to the 450 million YouTube users that use YouTube monthly as part of a digital content partnership agreement. So we're looking forward to working with YouTube on that for the coming year, and I think that'll offer great exposure for our conference. I want to talk a little bit about our television agreement. We're very proud to have extended our relationship with ESPN and ESPN Networks. We signed an 8-year agreement this summer that will keep West Coast Conference basketball on ESPN for the next 8 years, almost a decade. As part of that agreement, we'll have a record 17 conference games on ESPN Networks, 10 more non-conference games, and the quarterfinals, semifinals, and finals of our conference championship in Las Vegas will all be broadcast live on ESPNU, ESPN2, and ESPN respectively. So the national television agreement is very important to us. We also will soon announce an agreement with our regional television partners. That's Comcast, Cox, Fox Sports Net, and BYU TV, where we'll also be distributing a minimum of 30 more conference basketball contests regionally. That means that we'll have a record 75% of our conference basketball games, men's basketball games, will be shown either regionally or nationally this year, which is unprecedented for the West Coast Conference and positions us nationally as having perhaps the best television package of any basketball conference in the country. Competitively, I think everybody's looking forward to the 11-12 season. Certainly we have a new member that's going to bring a strong program to the fold. Just a couple of quick facts about 11-12. First of all, starting with last year, the West Coast Conference, we are coming off a very successful year that saw 6 of our 9 current schools participate in the postseason. In addition, obviously, BYU, then in the Mountain West Conference, reached the Sweet 16. The WCC has advanced 3 different schools to the Sweet 16 in the NCAA tournament over the past 3 years, something, again, that I think is unrivaled across the country out in the basketball conferences. And this is an interesting stat that was offered by one of our schools that we picked up quickly. That is, over the last 4 years, there are only 8 teams in Division I basketball that have won 25 or more games each year. Only 8 teams, and 3 of those teams are West Coast Conference teams, St. Mary's, Gonzaga, and BYU. Talk a little bit about our basketball championship in Las Vegas. The Zappos.com West Coast Conference Basketball Championship has been very successful for us, a great platform exposure-wise, a great competitive experience for our student athletes. We'll once again be back at the Orleans this year. The championship will run from February 29th to March 5th, a little bit longer because we'll have a Sunday day off, obviously, and we'll have 8-9 opening round games that will happen on Wednesday. And as I mentioned before, as part of our new agreement, ESPN will broadcast live nationally the quarterfinals, semifinals, and finals of the championship. Also today, we are releasing both our preseason coaches poll as well as our preseason all-conference teams. The preseason coaches poll, I believe, is on the table, or Jeff has it here for your release. Gonzaga was picked to win the conference this year by our panel of coaches, our head coaches. And in terms of our all-conference team players, I think we have a video that we can show you of that. So thank you for being here. I look forward to speaking to anyone in the open time with the media, and I hope you get a lot of time with our coaches and other folks at our institution. So thank you, and thanks to you too.
Court awareness, recognition. Foster, and that's what he can do for you. Kevin Foster from deep.
Got it. That's the sophomore Elias Harris.
Donald along the baseline to a cutting Rob Jones with some contact.
Ball on the deck, Sacre.
Six on the shot clock. Heine knocks it down.
Hi, everybody. I'm Barry Tompkins, and we're going to be talking on YouTube live today to all the coaches in the West Coast Conference. And it's a pleasure to welcome a guy I watched play not that many years ago, Eric Reveno, now the head coach at Portland. And Eric, first of all, let's talk about last season. Maybe kind of slipped under the radar, but 121 games, lined up in the postseason for the third year in a row. So before we look ahead, let's look back for a minute. Quite a year last year.
Yeah, no, it was a very good year for us. We had a lot of good seniors that, I'm missing this time of year. But we had a really great preseason, went into conference, and conference was tough. And we didn't quite finish in conference where we quite wanted, but the 21 wins is sort of another benchmark for us 3 years in a row of the last 3 years, 60 wins total, and being able to establish that solid ground and be able to give us something to build on.
Great backcourt last year. He lived and died on a three-point shot. What about this year?
This year we still have Nemanja Mitrovic, who was just voted preseason all-conference by the head coaches and deserving of that. He's a senior shooter, so he still gives us some shooting. We're a little more athletic with our young guys. If you average the last 3 years in college basketball, we were the number one three-point shooting team in the country. So I worry as a young head coach that I've coached my best shooting teams of my career already. So we're going to be I don't expect to be quite as good shooting the ball from deep, but want to be able to defend and get out and run a little bit more.
And as you were saying when we were chatting just before we went on here now, too, you're getting a better caliber of athlete now. As the league grows and your program grows, you're not necessarily just looking for those overachieving kinds of guys. You're getting better athletes.
Yeah, no, and with the class that just graduated, I mean, they will always be remembered as this really tremendous class with Jared Stoll, one of the best shooters in conference history, and Luke Sikma, school leading rebounder in school history, Kramer Knutson, most starts in school history. Those guys were the foundation, but you're exactly right. We've are building on that and trying to get a little better athlete and a little better player and see where we go.
I want to give you an opportunity to toot your own horn. Again, something you just told me that I didn't know and I think is really interesting is that the last 9 guys that you have graduated are all still playing someplace.
Yeah, no, it's the thing as a coach I'm most proud of. Last 2 years, 2010 class, 5 guys, 2011 class, 4 guys, they graduated and they all went and played professional basketball. So they came in, got their degree, and were able to play professionally. Now, the next step for us is to win a championship as a program, but I'm really proud of our staff and the players and for those guys, because it's a special window that we're working with.
All right, we're going to be taking questions from you. We want to know what you want to know from Eric Reveno and his counterparts here in the West Coast Conference. So we're going to take our first one right now, sent to us on Twitter, and I'll just read this verbatim here, Eric. I'm looking at it for the first time, just like you're going to answer.
Was it screened before it was handed
I
to
hope
you?
so. The past couple of seasons, the team has had strong veteran presence with Nemanja, as you said, and Eric, the only 2 seniors. How does your approach and the team's approach to today's activities change?
We're trying to adjust to the players we have, and I think I learned from some really good coaches that coaching is about putting players in position to be successful. We talked about the offseason being about player development and getting better, and now we're trying to mold that. And it's been really exciting for us. We have the same staff last 5 years at Portland, and so the fact that we're all the same is actually great because we can talk about how to best change and adjust to the talent we have. So I think for us, we need to be better defensively. We've been good offensively, and we need to be better defensively, and we need to then take advantage and get out and run a little bit more and get some easier buckets.
We talked a little bit earlier about the fact that you guys lived and died on a three-point shot, and obviously will continue to do so this year. But you also lost 10.5 rebounds a game, and Luke Sikma is graduating. Where do the rebounds come from?
Yeah, we have some good young big guys. In our scrimmages early, Thomas Vandermar is a freshman, Riley Barker a sophomore, Ryan Nicholas a sophomore. Dorian Cason, a freshman, they've been rebounding well. We need our wings to rebound more, and I think Luke Sikma had just a great nose for the ball. We did not help improve him at all rebounding-wise from a coaching perspective, except for strength and conditioning. He has a knack for finding the ball. Other guys would block out, he'd go get it. He'd chase balls down, get balls that we're going to have to get by committee a little bit. Our big guys are going to be good, but we need everyone rebounding.
I want to ask you about some of the young guys. I'm going to ask all these coaches about newcomers, guys we haven't seen before. Who can we look for at Portland?
Our 4 freshmen we're really excited about. The most highly touted, frankly, is Kevin Bailey from Fresno, top 100 player that everyone's excited about because he's a different level athlete than we've had, and he's doing real well. Dorian Cason, a big kid from Summit High School in Southern California, is really doing a nice job. He can shoot a little bit from outside. As a team, our post play, we're shooting it better from the perimeter, and it's a little more versatile. David Carr from Portland, a skilled little guard, and then we have a big kid, Thomas Vandermars, a Dutch kid, 6'10", and you got to love him because he loves being a post. He's not a 6'10", he's not one of those 6'10" guys that you recruit him, tell him he's going to be a 4, and then change him. I mean, he's a 5 through and through. So.
Not like most European players where they're going to stand out there.
He's got great feet, but he's comfortable. I think the European game they do a nice job working and teaching the feet. He's got good feet in the post, but he's comfortable using them in the post.
He's from Gouda in the Netherlands. So
yes.
Be a big cheese for you. I had to get that in.
Boom.
Bang! Yeah, that's right. Is there?
Where's the drum?
It would be cheap, and I'm sure you've never heard it before, right?
Yeah.
But I do want to ask you too. Is there a little bit of Eric Reveno in him? I mean, do you see something of yourself in a kid like that?
Yeah, better hopefully. He's longer but he likes contact, and I think it's when you find a guy that is comfortable with contact and comfortable being physical, but has good feet and willing to move. That's a real positive. I think he throws some skill. You got the makings of something.
All right, another viewer question here. This comes from Gavin by way of Facebook. We have a lot of young guys on the team that many fans haven't seen much of. I think this is just what I asked you, but much of. Which players do you think will be the biggest surprises to fans?
Like I said, Kevin is highly touted. I think people will be pleased with him, but I think they're expecting a little bit there. I think I'm not really surprised. Maybe David Carr from Portland. People. He's doing a really nice. Has a great feel. Just in drills and stuff, just has a really tremendous feel. Dorian Cason from Southern California. In basketball circles over last year, he signed in the fall, but over last year, people were saying, boy, he's a really good kid. He's very skilled and good. So I'm excited about our big guys. We talked about Thomas and stuff. So I'm excited about all of them, but we haven't played any games yet. And that veteran leadership, and we got a tough schedule on the road. So how quickly we can get them all on the right page and everything.
Aren't you finding, though, and both of us been around the game for a long time, that first-year players now, kids that are coming out of high school, just seem much more ready to take that step into Division I basketball? Yeah.
Coaches like me still like to sandbag, though, and say that they're freshmen and it's going to take them a while. But you're exactly right. Especially these international kids that you see at St. Mary's, but they're Australian kids that have played at a high level. I mean, the international kids have played for their country in really tough environments and games that mean a lot. They definitely have some experience. And then kids that play in the States and summer, all that basketball, they play at such a high level. They maybe play a lot of games and what it's like to have a game that means so much. They're not gonna. It's not like AAU where you play a game and then go to McDonald's and play another one in the afternoon. It's bigger than that. But you're right. They are more experienced than some kid who just spent the summer shooting in his gym.
Right. Another thing I don't understand. You won 21 games last year, as we said, 3 years in a row in the postseason, and this year again, not getting any respect here. You picked 7th in the conference, and a very tough conference to be sure. But do you like the idea that you might be able to sneak in under the radar?
Yeah. No. To be honest, if I was picking us, as I did it, we don't vote for ourselves. I start, looking at Santa Clara and USF and what they have back and the veterans and stuff, and it doesn't really mean anything now, and you can quibble about this or that, but I like it. I mean, I like being under the radar. I like for our young guys, not a lot of expectations. I like, it's just I try not to get into too much into the prediction side of the thing. It's sort of how you finish and see where we end up.
It wasn't too long ago where you'd have to go into a kid's home and say, the West Coast Conference. The West Coast Conference, it's got Gonzaga and a whole bunch of other teams. That's not so now. People know the West Coast Conference. I would imagine getting into a home and talking about this conference is a little bit different now than it was even when you started.
Yeah, no, it has changed. And we were talking about, in the 5 years that I've been at Portland, our reputation, but also the conference's reputation has become more robust. It's not just Gonzaga, and St. Mary's consistency has been great for the conference, and all the other programs doing well and having big wins, and sort of everybody rising has helped everybody. And I think you're right. We're in a different kind of home than we were a few years ago, and I think with the addition of BYU, that's only going to keep getting better, and the TV exposure. When I first got to the conference, I felt like we had the best TV package on the West Coast. Not to name other conferences, but and some other conferences are changing a little bit. The conference dynamics are changing, but we've gotten great TV exposure.
Eric, I think your teams echo what you're all about too. How you were as a player, and I think you've carried it on into coaching, doing a great job there, and I want to wish you continued success.
Well, thank you very much.
Thanks, Eric.
All right.
That's Eric Reveno. He's the head coach at Portland. Welcome back to those of you watching live here on YouTube. Kind of a first here on Media Day, and for YouTube, live down the line, talking with all the coaches in the West Coast Conference. It's a pleasure now to welcome the newest member of the coaching community in the West Coast Conference, Marty Wilson. First year as the head coach, but a guy who's no stranger to Pepperdine. You've been around the program 9 years coaching, and as a player for another 4 years, so it's all near and dear to you.
Yeah, and it's great for me to be back. I've actually been back the last 3 years, but being in a different role and trying to rebuild the tradition that we had, the great tradition that we had. And one thing that I'm trying to do is bring back the past so our guys understand the level of tradition that we've had and try to build upon it.
Talk to me about that a little bit. We were just chatting at one of your first practices, like what your equivalent of Midnight Madness. You did bring back some of the ghosts of the past.
We brought back probably 7 of the top 15 or 20 players ever to play there. Dwayne Poley, senior, Dane Suttle, senior, Orlando Phillips, Doug Christie, who played 15, 16 years in the league, Pepperdine Hall of Famer, Dana Jones, Pepperdine Hall of Famer, Jeff Lear. And I wanted those guys to come back so our players can understand the magnitude that Pepperdine basketball has. And they showed some video of those guys, and I think our guys got excited. Now they understand my passion for Pepperdine basketball.
Yeah, as they should. I mean, there's a great legacy of Pepperdine basketball, as you pointed out, and those are the guys that really made it. I got to think great for your players. We'll take a question right out of the box here that came to us from Facebook for you, from Eric. He says, in losing your top 3 scorers, where do you see the points coming from this year?
Well, hopefully, number one, I've already challenged our big guys. We need to get more from our paint, from Taylor Darby and Corbin Moore. I've told them from day one that we expect them to give us more. We have another big man, Jan Malin, that we're anticipating more from this year. He was a freshman last year. And then just trying to blend in some of the new guys and hopefully some of those guys step up, as well as a couple of our veterans. But it's going to be trial by error initially, just to see who's capable of doing what.
You lose Michael Thompson, a guy who played more games, I think, at Pepperdine than any other athlete in a long history at Pepperdine. Is there a replacement for a guy like that?
Well, and I wouldn't call it a replacement. Someone else just has to step in and hopefully take on some opportunity. I'm anticipating right away Hector Harold, who was a freshman who didn't play a whole lot for us last year, to hopefully step in and do some things that Michael did. He's probably the same size and probably equally as athletic as Michael. The thing that he has to strike against him is the lack of experience.
You do bring back, I see, 3 academic all-conference players, which is wonderful, and you want guys who are both have a high basketball IQ and a real high IQ too. But I got to think somewhere you don't want the GPA and the PPG to be the same thing.
No. I would trade a little bit of the GPA for more W's on the other side. But I tell you what, the great thing about Pepperdine, it's changed. The school has changed. It's gotten better academically. So the challenge for us is to get better players. 2 of those guys are guys that I mentioned, Taylor Darby and Corbin Moore. But we're challenging them to be better on the basketball floor as well.
Well, before you even get started, you lose arguably your best player, certainly your best scorer for the season. He would have been here, but Lauren Jackson goes down, and that's the end of it.
It was a big strike for all of us, obviously for Lauren. This is a second setback. He had blown his other ACL a couple of years ago. So for him to re-injure or injure his other knee going into his senior year, with the transition of me taking over and him working with some of the young guys, is a big blow. But I told Lauren we're going to use it as a positive. He's going to learn from it. He's going to get better. He's going to get bigger, stronger. We're going to use him as one of the coaches on this team, where he can have more of a voice with the team, and it makes it easier for him to transition
Keep him involved.
next year.
Keep him involved with the program. Yeah, and I'm sure he'll learn too, sitting at your side. I mean,
he will. He's already seen more on the sideline as a coach than he normally will as a player.
Let's take another question. This comes from Scott via Facebook, and Scott says, I think this is interesting too. You mentioned having to win with defense. What should we expect this year?
Well, number one, we weren't very good the last 3 years defensively, and that's one thing that we've harped on. I think most coaches that have played, you try to teach what you did as a player, and I was considered a defensive player. So I've challenged our guys to defend better.
Are you not finding that kids now are coming in to Division I schools taking a pride in how they play defense more than they did maybe when you played or even when you first started coaching?
I think so. I think guys are coming in. Obviously, kids are getting better and better at a younger age. And I think they're coming in more prepared physically and athletically. And I think some kids are having more and more of a mindset to be able to defend as well.
You're stepping into this conference, and again, this is not an enviable task. You lose your best scorer, and even though you do have players coming off a 12-win season. And arguably, this West Coast Conference this year is probably as good. Certainly, in the years that I've been around it, this is the best I've ever seen it.
No doubt, and it's a challenge. Obviously, my hat comes off to Gonzaga and what they've done. Mark's done an unbelievable job there. Randy's done an amazing job in changing that program at St. Mary's. Rex did a great job last year at San Francisco, and I think all the other programs and coaches are doing a great job. And then you add the addition of BYU. It's a challenge, but as a competitor, as a coach, you want to play against good teams, and you want your team to get better by playing against other good teams.
And I would think you've got to look at what Mark did and what Rex is doing, what Randy did at St. Mary's, and say, hey, St. Mary's facility is not nearly as nice as what you have down at Pepperdine, and their location. I mean, I like it; it's a nice campus, but hey, Malibu, come on. So you got to look at that and say, if they did that, there's no reason why I can't do it here.
Why not Pepperdine? You know what my mindset, Barry, is focus on the process. There's a process that goes on. I don't want to just rush into taking guys that might be good players that's not a good fit and not propel our program. We're going to focus on the process. We're going to take baby steps. And the main thing with us is the continuity, making sure we keep the players there, continue to build better players, and let it take on the process in itself.
It's not unprecedented, without question, in this conference. We'll take this from Eric. Comes this question via Facebook. What type of pace do you envision for both sides of the ball this year?
Well, number one, defensively, we're going to get out and challenge. We're not going to be wild and pressing and doing things that are out of character where we're open in the lane. We're going to be a compact defensive team, physical and tough, hopefully. And offensively, hopefully we can create more off of our defense. And I told our guys, we get steals and rebounds and quick outlets. We want to get layups, dunks, and wide open threes, obviously to the right people.
Yeah, there's a school of thought that says kids today, they want to play an up-and-down game. They want to run it up and down the floor. They want to score a lot. And yet, guys like Ben Holland are doing pretty well, playing it in the 60s. What's your philosophy?
Well, you know what, guys want to win. I think that's what it comes down to. I know Ben pretty well, and people talk about run. It sounds good, but ultimately kids want to play and win. And so if we can establish that and build upon that where we win and then create the opportunity to run and win, that's going to be a big plus for us.
I don't know what your early season schedule looks like, but let's talk about that a little bit. And I would think that's the time where you're going to establish, this is what I do, this is how we're going to play, and more importantly, here's who's going to play.
Well, yeah, we have a tough schedule. We play 3 Pac-12 schools. We play Arizona State, UCLA, and Washington State. And we want that as a challenge in preparation for our conference. But, yeah, we have to create an identity right away in our first few games where our guys build some confidence and they build upon it, where it allow us to progress as the season goes on.
Who do you see picking up the scoring slack that's lost with Lauren Jackson being out?
Well, as I mentioned, I hope that our 2 bigs, Taylor Darby and Corbin Moore, will inside. We've been so dominant on the perimeter with our scoring. We need more of a balance. So hopefully those guys can establish some of that inside. And I think the improved shooting that we have, obviously losing Lauren hurts us, but the improved shooting that we have with Nico Skewen coming in, with Jordan Baker as a freshman coming in, Hector Harrell returning as a sophomore. So I think hopefully those guys will step up and help.
You know, finally, and this is something you and I talked about just before we came on here, and that is the recruiting process in Southern California. So many good players. And historically, you know, UCLA and USC would go in and say, okay, I'll take him and I'll take him. But it left plenty of people for places like Pepperdine. A lot of Southern California kids want to stay home. And now you don't have to make any apologies for the conference you're playing.
No, not at all. Not at all. And that's one thing that we want to do. We want to try to make sure California, specifically Southern California, is our home base. And we need the kids there to understand what the tradition of Pepperdine is. A lot of these kids' parents grew up watching Pepperdine back in those days, and they know the Dwayne Polies and the Dane Suttles. So the era of their families knowing what Pepperdine's about, hopefully we could lure some of those kids there too.
Well, I know you got a big job, but I know you'll do a good job. So, Marty, I want to wish you success
Thank
at
you.
Pepperdine. Thanks so
Appreciate
much.
it. Thank you.
That's Marty Wilson, head coach at Pepperdine. Welcome back to a visit with the West Coast Conference coaches here on YouTube. Up first, if you will, and pleasure now to chat with an old friend, Billy Greer, who is in fact, I call him Billy. How do you like that? He's Bill now. He's all business. Head coach at San Diego. Before we talk hoops, tell me about your golf game. Go ahead, brag. I want you to brag.
It has some Barkley-esque moments to it at times, but I was out with Coach Munson from Long Beach State my last round of the summer and had my first hole-in-one of my life. So that was pretty exciting.
Is that impressive? I guess.
Yeah.
That'll make your season. Doesn't matter. Basketball.
Yeah, no, I know. I told Dan, hey, I think my luck's changing.
Well, let's talk about that. I mean, last year, you really had the feeling it really was an aberration. I mean, it started bad and it got worse.
Yeah, when you have a young group and then you lose some close games, I think you really start to lose confidence. And, we lost 7 games by 5 points or less, and that really wore on us. We got into conference play. In the first 5 games in conference, we led at the under 16-minute media timeout and lost all of them. And so it snowballed on their confidence, and it was really difficult for that group and a war on them. They hung together and found a way through all that to step up and beat a very good St. Mary's team at the end of the year. So I think it showed what they were capable of doing. We just didn't do it on a consistent basis at all.
But it's nice to do it at the end of the year when you can kind of take that into the next season.
Sure, absolutely. And that's certainly, I think you go through a season like that as a player and as a staff, it's more motivation for the next year. And so I think our guys right now have a chip on their shoulder that they're out to prove something this year. And there's just a better feel about our group this year,
Well, and sometimes too, I would think, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth here, but it takes a little while for a coach to kind of establish, this is my team, this is how I'm going to operate, this is how I do things, this is the kind of kid I want here.
Yeah, recruiting's not an exact science. You don't know what you have until you get a kid there and you actually get to work with them. And then at a school like ours, and like a lot of the teams in this conference, the academic demands are very difficult. And in trying to find a kid that has the right athletic ability to fit those kind of academic standards, it's been some hit and miss with us. I do feel like we're headed in the right direction. We have a good group of young players, and quite honestly, I think our young guys have infused some enthusiasm into some of our older guys.
We'll take a question. As we said, we encourage your questions. We want to know what you have to say. Tweet us, get to us via Facebook. This is from Eric on Facebook, who says, who do you anticipate making the starting lineup this year?
Well, I think on the interior, we have 2 experienced posts, and Chris Gabriel and Chris Manresa. Now, I think Chris Manresa has probably made the biggest jump of anybody of the returners in our program. His body has really changed, and I think his presence and the way he's carrying himself has really changed. Obviously, Darian Norris started every game for us, so it's a pretty good chance he's going to start. And then it's a little bit up in the air at the other guard spots. I think we can play a couple of different ways. We can go with a more experienced guy at the 3 and Ransford, or we can play a smaller lineup. And I've really liked 2 of our freshmen, in Johnny D and Chris Anderson. And there's quite a possibility we could go with a very small lineup at times and play 3 little guys together with 2 big guys.
You lost 17.5 points a game, and you talk about Manresa, certainly a great rebounder, great shot blocker. Will you look to him to score a little bit more this year?
Yeah, absolutely. I think he has to step up and take on more of a scoring role. I think he's in the past deferred too much to older players, and I've seen some gains in his confidence. Certainly what he's done in the weight room, I think, has helped that. But also, I think if you looked at how he played against St. Mary's in that game that we won, I think that was really a coming out time in the season for him, and he kind of built off that going forward.
You talk about a couple of the freshmen. You have 4 new faces on the team, a couple of the freshmen, and something we were talking to Eric Reveno about before. All of a sudden, it seems to me, at least, as an outsider looking in, that freshmen just seem more ready to play coming into a D1 program.
Yeah, now. I think you're right, Barry. I think part of that is because they just play so much now with all their travel stuff, and they play against high-level players kind of throughout the course of the summer, whereas it was more localized and regional 15, 20 years ago. Now these kids are playing against all kinds of players, so there's not maybe the intimidation factor there would be had they never played against somebody that good going forward. So I do feel that our two true freshmen are very poised for their age, you know. Now, I only say that from experience and practice, but I think both of them are going to play like that in a game.
Let's take another question. This is from Patrick via Facebook. He says, how do you replace the leadership of Matt Dorr and Devin Ginty?
Well, certainly I think Matt and Devin brought tremendous leadership to our team. Really going through a year like that, it could have really spiraled in the locker room and those kind of things. And I think Matt and Devin did a great job of keeping our group together. And the thing that I felt good about the group last year is they kept practicing hard as the season went along. You know, Darian Norris is a guy that we really look to this year. He's our lone senior. His leadership and his experience is a guy that our players and our staff will rely heavily on. But, you know, we have some young guys right now that I think have the makings of good leaders, and so far they've kind of stepped up in practice and shown that. And I think as a whole, just the character of our team overall is better.
Yeah, you talk about one senior and 8 freshmen, if I'm correct, and again, something we were talking to some of the other coaches about too, and that is now you go into a kid's house and you talk about the West Coast Conference, you're not only talking about Gonzaga and 8 other teams, you're talking about teams that everybody knows, and now a conference that everybody knows.
Sure. You know, I think the national profile of this conference, you know, for years, and when I was an assistant in Spokane, it was pretty much about what was going on in Spokane. But I think what Randy has done at St. Mary's and now having Dave come in at BYU, you have some national names out there. I think what Kerry did last year with his team in the postseason, and certainly Rex is at a very storied program that you're familiar with the success they had back in the late 60s, 70s and whatnot. But Rex did a very good job. So you have some teams that do have some name recognition out there nationally, and I think a big part of that is not only their success, but the television package that we have in this conference. You know, to be in a partnership with ESPN does nothing but get your name out there on a national level.
And kids are savvy about that. That's a question
Absolutely.
that they ask.
Absolutely. You know, I think that's a big part of the recruiting process.
You know, we talk about other places that you mentioned. You know, St. Mary's, certainly Santa Clara, everybody's doing a great job. Portland did a good job. San Diego, great place to live. You played a great facility. Now the conference is known. You know, I'm not trying to put the onus on you, but this should be a place that you can win.
No, it is. It is. And, you know, like I said earlier, I think it's about finding the right kid that fits not only athletically but academically. You know, there's some very strong demands on our student athletes, like there are at the other schools, but higher than I've ever been exposed to. And I think that's also a positive thing, because at the end of the day, they're getting a very high-level education that once basketball is done, they're going to be prepared to be very successful in life.
You talk about being an assistant at Gonzaga. So you and Mark Few still very good friends, actually lived together for a time up in Spokane. How much of Mark Few do you take with you into your head coaching business?
Well, you know, I think I've taken a little bit from the 3 guys I work for. Obviously a lot from Mark, because I spent the most time with him. But also Dan Munson, and then it started with me, with Dan Fitzgerald. And so I think a little bit from each of them, and you try to fit it into your own personality, and you have to be yourself. You can't try to be something that you're not. And so I think there's things that all 3 of those guys did well, and I try to take bits and pieces from each of them.
You've been in this business that long, you don't even have any gray hairs.
I do.
Just a few.
Yeah,
they all came last year, right?
Well, they've been coming.
This conference, again, you know, you're taking on a really tough conference. It certainly is. It's as good as I've ever seen it.
Yeah, you know, there's been years where we talk about, boy, this conference is really good, but this year it's got depth, you know, and it's top heavy. There's some very good teams at the top half of this league right now, and I think there's going to be some good battles every week, every night, you know, night in, night out, across every gym that are really going to have a big say in what happens in the league race and seeding for that conference tournament.
You know, I've got to think, and again, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but there's got to be an emphasis on you got to win at home and then get what you can on the road.
Yeah, I mean, you have to try to take care of business at home, no matter where you are. but that's easier said than done when you're looking at Gonzaga coming in, BYU coming in, St. Mary's coming in, and teams like that. So you want to protect your home turf and then give it your best shot on the road and see what you can come up with. But if you can take care of business at home, you're going to have a successful league season.
Billy, I really do wish you all the success in the world at San Diego.
Thanks, Barry.
One of my favorite guys.
All right.
Bill Greer.
Thanks.
We welcome you back. We're talking to all the West Coast Conference coaches, and I go from one of my favorite guys to another one of my favorite guys. Talk to his former assistant, Bill Greer, and here's the man himself, Mark Few. And Mark, coming off a 25-10 season, 11-3 in the conference, and I don't usually throw stats around, but 316 wins in 12 years. That's getting the job done. Let's talk about this year. What can we look for from Gonzaga?
Well, I think it'll be the youngest probably team that we've marched out there where we're really counting on some young guys stepping it up, especially in the backcourt. We have a ton of experience coming back in the front court, proven guys that have been through all kinds of wars and adversity and have shined brightly, throughout their whole careers. And we know we can count on, obviously, Rob and Elias and Sam and Kelly and Marquise Carter. And now we got to bring in a young group of guys,
It almost seems like it's not so much who's going to play as who's not going to play.
Yeah, I think we'll have a good, solid core group that we can count on. Obviously we had David Stockton got some good minutes last year too. That's going to help as we begin this season really young, kind of at the point and the off-guard spots. But hopefully, I like the guys that we brought in, and they're meshing really good. This year's team might have as good a chemistry as we've ever had. So in that regard, I don't think that they'll get too caught up. And
that's saying a lot because the Rony Turioff teams really have good chemistry.
Yeah.
That says a lot.
Good mention of the history
not
there.
Bad,
good segue. You're a pro.
Even got his name right.
Yeah.
And not to mention the fact that now, because your program has been what it was, 11 straight conference championships and all those trips to the tournament, people are starting to understand that it's Gonzaga, not Gonzaga.
Thanks to
You're getting
people
it all
like
right.
you.
You're getting it all right.
Yeah.
But also, there was a philosophy that you had to have for many years. I always likened it to what Pat Hill does at Fresno State, which is anybody, anywhere, anytime. And that's what you had to do to get noticed. You had to go on the road, play tough teams, and you did that year in and year out. And I'm not saying you don't have to do it anymore, but when you walk into a house now, people know who you are. They know who Gonzaga is.
Yeah, definitely. And also, scheduling now. I mean, we can get home and homes with pretty much anybody that we need to, and that's what we have this year. We got some great home schedule with Notre Dame and Michigan State, Butler coming in, Arizona and Seattle, and we'll have Illinois coming in the following year, and so kind of ties in with we always want to play a very, very difficult schedule. If you think you have an NCAA tournament team, I think you got to schedule tough to prepare yourself and hopefully put yourself in position for an at-large bid if you need it at the end of the year.
And the conference, of course, is tough too. It used to be that things drop off and you get to conference play. Not so anymore. I'll ask this question from Rodney via Facebook, which is on the subject of what we're talking about. He says, is the West Coast Conference a multi-bid league this season? Also, how many teams do you see making the NCAA?
I think it's definitely a multi-bid league. I think this is as good. You and I have been in and around this conference a long time now. It's as good as I've ever seen it, I think. I don't think I've ever seen the quality and depth from top down to bottom. I mean, there's some very, very good teams. I think there's a lot of teams that'll win 20-plus games this year, and how the multi-bid thing plays out, it'll be interesting. But I think the addition of BYU certainly gives us another national program in the conference. So I hope people don't always think that you're going to roll through and go undefeated, which was I always felt like that was the most unfair assessment of our league. And
but I think for a time that was a perception.
People
did think that.
Yeah.
And now I got to think, okay, your one-loss record may not be quite what it was, but you're also going to be much more ready to play in the postseason.
For sure, and I think every night is going to be a challenge in this league. I mean, and I think any wins you can accrue in that should be looked at very positively as you try to look down the road to get into the NCAA tournament.
A lot of tough home courts. So you talk about BYU, and people say, well, what's BYU doing in this conference? They beat you by 22 in the tournament last year. So, as that just will give you an idea of what this conference is going to be like.
Yeah. And Dave's had a great run down there. I think their home court's probably every bit as tough or has accrued the same kind of winning percentage maybe as the Kennel has, and they're a great addition from a conference point of view. You know, when you're coaching in the league, it's kind of like, hey, it's going to make it that much tougher. But again, I think that'll be good. I mean, now you should be looking at our team along the lines of the Pac-12 and you know, the Mountain West and some of the teams as we start heading back east is definite multi-bid conference.
Yeah, I think actually right now, I was talking to somebody earlier today who said they actually rate higher than the Pac-12 right now.
I could see that.
Let's take a question here from Lenny via Facebook. He says, what team do you think is going to be the surprise in the conference this year?
Surprise. Well, I don't know. I wouldn't consider San Francisco a surprise, but I think Rex has done a great job there. I really like the way his team played at the end of last year, and he's got everybody back. And I think they're a team maybe that not enough people know about outside our conference they're very, very good. I mean, they got a bunch of guys back from a 20-plus win team. So I think that's a very, very dangerous team. And I think Loyola Marymount will be healthier this year, and we'll end up getting that thing turned around.
Yeah, all 5 starters back at USF this year, and as you said, a very deep team. Speaking of depth, we talked about some of your depth too, but also 5 freshmen on your team this year. Are we going to see any of them? And tell us about who we might see.
Oh, you'll see a lot of them. Hopefully by the time you see them, they'll be grown up. But a neat class, a class that reminds me a little bit of the Santangelo, Fromm, Nielsen, Floyd, kind of that class back in the day. Very skilled, very good feel for the games, very driven, and great teammates. And from Kevin Pangos at the point to Gary Bell, who was a top 50 recruit in the country. And then a kid named Kyle Dranginas is a very good guard who can shoot it, drive it, pass it, kind of what I call a complete guard. And then a Ryan Spangler out of Oklahoma. Big, kind of strong guy, much like out of the mold of Corey Violette back in the day. Yeah. And all of those guys, they're ready to play. I think they can help us, and I think we'll see a lot of them.
I'm really interested in what the difference is now when you're in a home, whereas in the past you had to kind of explain to people what Gonzaga was, where Spokane was, what the West Coast Conference was. Yeah. And now I would imagine you can go in there and be a little bit more selective and say, well, just look what we've done. We'd love to have you.
Yeah, definitely. Without question, I think there isn't any lack of knowledge now about the program. I think that the flip side of it is you kind of got to be careful because you got to really make sure there's a lot of people that are interested, and you can travel a long ways all the way out to the East Coast for guys that are interested. But is the level of interest high enough maybe to beat that Big East school to come here, or to beat that Big 12 school, or you know, to beat a team from the SEC? I mean, do they really want to come that far out? So you got to pick your battles wisely, and then we also, I think, can't forget what got us to where we are.
You know, that's what I was going to ask you about. Historically, at least in my memory of Gonzaga, even going back to Coach Fitz, there was always a certain. It was that tough guy, that kind of overachieving guy, maybe a big guy who might be an inch or two undersized, but played a lot bigger than that. And now that you're getting better athletes in there, but I would imagine that's still at the core of what you're looking for.
Yeah, I mean, that's embedded in my brain pretty solidly, as it is in Billy's and Dan Munson's. And but at the same time, you know, the program's evolved, you know, and it's evolved into. You know, I mean, we need to, recruiting's kind of the lifeblood of the program. We need to go out and sign, you know, the best players that we can that fit where we're at. We can always improve the program. We're going to do that. I mean, we've had many guys who've left early for the NBA, which.
But you don't miss a beat.
Yeah, well, so far, it's true. But it's, you know, I mean, we're blessed to be able to have those guys, and we'd take them again.
Just reload.
Yeah.
We'll take this last one from Scott on Facebook. Do you anticipate this year's team playing a slower, more half-court type of game with so much size and depth from the front line?
Nah, it's just not my nature.
No, it's not.
No. And I mean, I hope we'll play faster than we played last year, actually. I think this group's kind of built for that. They can pass it. We should be able to pass it better and shoot it better. And the one thing the bigs can do is run. and there's enough of them that we can kind of change them in and out. So.
Well, Mark, I want to wish you continued success. I have no reason to think it's going to be anything but what it has been. So, again,
well, it's great to see you,
all
Barry.
over again. Always great to see you.
Great to see you.
That's Mark Few, head coach at Gonzaga. Well, it's a pleasure right now to welcome the newest member of the West Coast Conference, that is BYU, and their coach, Dave Rose. And Dave, first of all, let's talk about the change coming from the Mountain West Conference into the West Coast Conference. Kind of out of the frying pan into the fire, isn't it?
I think you're coming into a league that not only has great basketball tradition, but might be as good as the league's been from top to bottom for a long time. And it's exciting for us. Looking forward to a new challenge. I think that people ask me, well, what do you think about it, or what do you like, or what are your feelings? And you know, for me, it's let's just experience it and let's see how it works. You know, you're going. You got to try to win some home games, and you got to try to win some games on the road and see if you can win a championship. That's the challenge in whatever league you're in. But this will be really unique because of how new it is to everyone.
I think you could fit every other arena in the West Coast Conference into your place, though.
Yeah, but you know, I don't really. Our arena, when it's empty, is really big, but when you fill that up, it just seems like it's a really small place, and so I don't think the volume is actually the issue. It's you know, if you can pack it and play in an exciting, spirited arena, the size I don't think really matters.
It's a great place to play. There's no question about it. And I think visiting teams are going to enjoy going there and playing too. But I think that can be set up and down this league. There's a lot of maybe in this league, of all leagues that have been around, there's more home court edge than any other conference that I can recall.
Yeah, and we really felt that in the Mountain West Conference, playing in the pit and in the you know, the AA up in Laramie and Thomas and Mack, yeah, the Cox Arena. And so I think we're used to, our players, our returning players anyways, are used to really tough environments, and we look forward to that same experience here in this league.
We'll take a question here from Tony via Facebook. Interesting question, I think. He says, what differences have you noticed in recruiting trips when talking to potential players about the West Coast Conference and BYU's television exposure?
Well, I'll tell you, I think our recruiting at BYU is pretty unique to our university, and most of the players that we're involved with, they have a real history with BYU somehow, either through the church or through their parents or, you know, a friend who's been there. But the one thing that we are really excited about is the credibility that some of the top teams, the St. Mary's, their run to the Sweet 16 a couple of years ago, Gonzaga's consistent in top 25 appearance over the last 13 or 14 years, brings such credibility to this league that recruits are really excited to talk about the WCC.
Mark Few's really waiting for you. You know, you took a 22-point beating on him at the tournament.
I kind of get the feeling that everybody's rooting for us, you know, because you're the new guy in, and everybody's heard about us coming into the league, and they've talked a little bit about it and talked a lot about it. And I think the players and the coaches, you know, they'll all kind of want a piece of the new guy.
Well, all right, you may be the new guy, but you're a talented new guy, both from a coaching perspective and from a player perspective. Tell us about some of the players that you have and who you might be with.
Well, I think that we're really excited about our front line. Our front line is we've got a lot of experience with Brandon Davies and Noah Hartsock and Charles Abuo. Those three guys have played in big games. They've won a lot of games for us. They made winning plays in big games. And we'll rely on those guys early in the season especially. Play through our post, and those guys will have to make decisions, make big plays. Our guard line, I think we're very talented. We're very inexperienced. We don't have a lot of minutes logged at that spot, but we're looking forward to a group of 4 or 5 guys competing for that spot. And then we add a very talented player at semester in Matt Carlino, who transferred from UCLA, and believe that he'll be a real talented player and add to our depth.
You don't find guys like that kid that you lost, Jimmer Fredette, and 29 points very often. Where do the 29 points come from?
Well, I think it'll come from a lot of players. You know, I've explained this quite a few times that in the 6 years that we've been there at BYU, that this is the first year that we've only had 2 players average in double figures. And Jimmer at 27 and then Jackson at 13, so you lose those 40 points. But what we usually have is a group of 5 or 6 guys somewhere between 9 and 16, 17 points a game. I believe that's what we'll kind of go back to. We're very fast-paced. You know, we're attack on offense after makes, after misses, try to get the ball in the post, play through our post. We might play a little bit faster without Jimmer, because Jimmer was a guy who really liked to keep that ball in his hands.
and
we may race that thing up on a pass and try to initiate our offense a lot quicker.
Let's take a question from Lance on Facebook. A question I was going to ask you, and I'm sure you've been asked many times. How does Brandon Davies returning to the team help both from a mental and a physical viewpoint?
Well, I think he's obviously physically a really good player, but the biggest lift is the confidence it gives the rest of our players to have him in the post and to know that, he's a rebounder, he's a scoring threat every time he touches the ball. But he's a guy that we hope to, throughout the season, develop well enough in the low post as a scorer that he demands a double team. And as far as how we play and with the skill set that our players have, if we can get a player in the post that needs a second defender, or maybe even just a half of a second defender, then it's going to create opportunities for a lot of our guys on the perimeter, and that's a good thing.
I don't know if you're a coach who thinks about wouldas and couldas and shouldas, but I'm sure it had to have crossed your mind more than once of what if Brandon were there in the tournament last year.
Well, I think that, that's part of your team. It's part of the season. It's part of life that you have to deal with adversity. Things aren't always going to go exactly how you want. I was really proud of our players, how they responded to that. We had the news on Monday. We played on Wednesday, New Mexico at home, and they put it on us pretty good. And our guys were really kind of shaken, didn't know which direction we were going to go. And we could still win the conference championship with the Saturday afternoon game against Wyoming. Guys came back. We won that game. Won a couple games in the tournament, the conference tournament, lost to San Diego State in the finals, but then we won a couple games in the NCAA tournament. And I really think that those are life lessons that you learn through sport, because you think things are going so well, then all of a sudden a day shows up and things aren't going that well for you, and then you have to respond to it. And I was really proud of our guys, how they responded.
I kind of think that Brandon may respond this year also. It goes two ways.
I think so. I think that his determination to make things right will really help him, I think, in the next year or so.
Another question that we'll take from Cameron on Facebook, and we touched upon this. You touched upon this earlier, but maybe we could elaborate. How will Matt Carlino becoming eligible to play after the season begins help the team going into the conference?
I'll tell you right now, the Matt Carlino issue is really difficult to manage in practice. He's a very good player, but we are trying to find our backcourt and try to play 10 games without him. And so what we've basically done with Matt is used him to try to help our players get better. There's going to come a time here in the next couple of weeks where we're going to have to integrate him back with the top 7, top 8 guys, because he's going to be a big part of our team once he becomes eligible in December. So it's difficult to manage. It's been tough on him. But when he came to BYU, he had 12 months to sit out. I think we're inside of 8 weeks now. So you just have to kind of think positive, and he's a very, very talented player that plays really hard, and I think will be a great addition to us.
You touched upon the early part of the season, the first 10 games, and interesting looking at your schedule. You play outside the state of Utah only twice in the entire preseason before conference starts.
It's really interesting. Last year, in our 15 non-conference games, I think we played 11 of them outside of the Marriott Center. I mean, we were all over the country. We played in Glens Falls. We played in Buffalo, New York. We played back at Creighton. I mean, we were all over the map. And this year, the schedule seems to just kind of rotate back to where we have quite a few home games and quite a few games in the state. And hopefully that helps our guys. Travel sometimes can be a little distracting. Hopefully we can limit that travel a little bit, become really consistent, get a few wins, get some confidence, because when the league cranks up in December, I think it's December 27th or 28th, it's going to be quite a challenge.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit. Is there a philosophy that I know some of the other coaches share here, that you got to win at home and you got to get what you can on the road?
Yeah, well, I think that's kind of worked really well for us, that we have been able to protect our home court. That's when you let a couple of those get away, you really have a lot of work to do on the road. I know that every win that you can get on the road in conference players, those are just special nights. I mean, it's great to win at home, and you feel that real euphoria of good accomplishment, but it's nothing like when you get a road win. I mean, and so hopefully we can. The way that we start this conference is at St. Mary's.
Yeah, easy.
They put
piece of cake.
And so that's going to be really difficult, but I think it's a challenge that we'll look forward to.
and hopefully be able to get a win and then build on that. I think it's a really great marriage. I think you're great for the conference. I think the conference is going to be great for BYU. Thanks a lot. Dave. We're excited. Really appreciate it. Thanks. Well, once again, it's a pleasure for me to welcome an old friend. Knew him when he was a kid. Still a kid. Rex Walters into his 4th year as the head coach at the University of San Francisco, coming off a 19-15 season and 10-4 in the conference. And I think that that record is a little bit deceiving because you started out, I think, 1-10. Is that right?
We struggled early. We really struggled early. Had a few issues and injuries and a lot of young players, and they kind of found themselves. They deserve the credit, quite honestly, because they really came together and started playing some good basketball.
Well, they did, but I think that falls at the feet of the head coach, too. I think you're being a little bit too modest. All of a sudden now you've gone from the hunter to the hunted in the West Coast Conference. Right. Every coach that sat in that chair, I said, well, Rex at USF, he's got it going.
Yeah, that's awfully kind. We got a lot of work to do, and this is a great conference, and we were talking. There are no easy games, and we played BYU 2 years ago, and gosh, they're really good, and obviously the job that Mark and Randy do, but you can go down the line. I mean, there's a lot of talented basketball players there. When I look over that other bench, I'm not going to outsmart them. You know what I mean? We got to really get after it in the way we prepare. We've got to play the right way. Defensively, it's really big for us. But it's awfully nice of them to say, but the bottom line is you got to play the game.
Well, and I would have to think, too, you got to hold serve at home. I think that's probably the bottom line of this conference this year. Am I right?
Our guys have been good at home. We're still trying to build a great home court environment, and it's getting better. Our guys definitely get up. For us, though, if you want to win a league championship, though, you got to be able to go on the road and have a road toughness, a savvy, and also calmness to be able to handle adversity. I always tell our guys, the really tough guys do it when it's not easy, when things are going against you, and for us to stick together at that point. So hopefully, knock on wood, we stay healthy, and hopefully some of these guys are right.
I think they are, actually. You grew up in the Bay Area, so you know the history at USF. Yeah. A two-part question, really. A, do you talk to your players about the history? And B, do they care?
We definitely talk about. We're surrounded by banners. Everywhere you look in our gym, there's banners and great players. And obviously, I know them a little bit better than our guys. We had Bill Cartwright. He came and talked to all of our student athletes, and Quentin Daly's come to games, and John Hegwood has come through, and I talked to Wallace Bryant, and for me, that's what makes it special for me. I want our guys, Kevin Rastani, God rest his soul. He passed away as well as Quentin Daly, and he talked to our guys when we first got here. Mike Quick. I want our guys to understand, the legacy that Lay left, and I'm telling our guys it's harder. It's harder now because back then USF was the team, and you're dealing with a monster at BYU. You're dealing with a monster in Gonzaga, and what Randy's done at St. Mary's. We had 6 out of 9 teams playing the postseason last year. That's a heck of an accomplishment. So it's not going to be easy, but I wouldn't want it to be.
See, you're trying to make it that underdog's too strong a word, but I'll use it for lack of another. You kind of like that we're not being respected, so we got to go out there and earn respect.
Well, at KU, you twisted it. Everyone's after us, and now we're after everybody. But our guys are excited about this year. I think that before I used to always talk about blind faith. You guys, you got to have blind faith. You got to know that if you do the right thing, something good's going to happen. Well, now they've kind of tasted a little bit, so hopefully I feel like they're even more hungry because they tasted the postseason. They know that they've had some success against some of the top teams in our league. We were one game from really, being co-champions in our league, and so they know how close they are. The biggest thing for us is, like I said, defensively we got to continue to get better. We do have a team. I think we have a fun style. I was watching Run TMC the other day. For us,
very similar,
I like the way that all flowed. And we're our perimeter team. We do shoot a lot of threes. We do play up tempo.
Quick.
We have a team speed. We're not going to overwhelm you with our size. We're not a big team.
Right.
But if we do those things and knock on wood, we have to stay healthy. Right now, I wouldn't say we're a deep team. But if we can stay healthy and we can cultivate a 6, 7, 8, 9 guy that we can really count on night in and night out, then we really have a chance.
We'll talk about some of the specifics of the players on this team, but we'll take a question first from Jack on Facebook. Says, what are some of the difficulties you face when trying to put together a schedule that you can do, what you can do, if anything, to solve those difficulties? Is it difficult?
It is difficult. You talk to anyone in our league, it's hard for us to get home and home games. That's always been a difficulty. We challenge ourselves a little bit with the Great Alaska Shootout. There'll be some really good teams up there playing on a neutral site. We've not done well on neutral sites. It's something that we got to get better at. We've got a good mix of home and away games. We'll face some teams that have tasted the postseason as well. But it's hard for us to get Pac-12 teams to play us home and home. And my AD's done a great job. We don't want to just play one-and-done games where we just go on the road.
You're always on Monty. I heard you sticking Monty. I heard you.
You know, but it's tough for us to get. We would love to play Cal every year. Obviously, we'd love to play Stanford every year. But, you know, those things, they don't always work out. But you keep asking and see what happens. Hopefully in the future, maybe that can happen. But the schedule, it's a lot more difficult. You know, as a head coach in my 5th year, I still have a lot of work to do in that area, but it's a learning process. But we'll continue to try to make it as tough as we can. But also, you got to do it for what your team's ready for. You know what I mean?
All right, let's take a look at some of the guys that you do have. A guy that I really like a lot, all-conference player, so he's no secret anymore, Michael Williams.
Yeah, really talented. Every year he's taken a step up, and even his body's changed a little bit. I mean, he's the fastest player I've ever coached. From end line to end line, I mean, he really can move, but he's also very skilled. He can pass the basketball, he can bounce it, shoots it with range. You know, we give him a little bit more freedom than we give a lot of our other guys because, you know, he can really make plays. And really, he's a pleaser, too. That's what I like about Mikey the most. He's a pleaser. He wants to do the right thing. He wants to be coached. He welcomes that. And he'll have a chance to have a really good season for us.
And Rashad Green with him in the backcourt. It's a very, very good, talented backcourt.
You know, our guys need each other. You know, we need Mikey's ability to shoot the basketball from deep. Rashad does some different things. He can shoot the ball as well from 3, but he can post up. He's got a great nose for the ball, and we need nose for the ball type of guys. He's competitive. I mean, he will. In the end of the season, when guys are starting to get a little bit winded, he found a way to get our guys going again. He's a great competitor. He's been having a great preseason, probably the best of anyone so far. I mean, he's really dominated practices.
Taking on a leadership role.
No question. Yeah. Him and Angelo both, and they need that, and Cody Doolin as well. You know, those 4 have been great. Paris has been banged up. We got to get him back, but that's what we have to separate those 4 guys right now: Mikey, Rashad, Cody, Angelo, because we can't have practice if they're on the same team. It'll be a blitzkrieg.
Wow,
yeah.
Well, that's a good
thing,
problem to have.
In some ways, yeah.
We'll take a question from B Money 429. You know him, B Money 429. Do you think USF will get more national exposure by playing in the Great Alaska Shootout?
I think so. You know, the WCC and ESPN's been good to us. We'll get a few more games on ESPN as well. You know, next year we talk about schedule. Next year we're going to the Diamond Head. You know, we're planning on going there for that, which will be an ESPN tournament. And we think obviously University of San Francisco, it's a national name because we live in the greatest city in the world. You know what I mean? But we also want to be known for basketball and take our university and put them on that stage by being on ESPN. You know, being on television as much as possible.
Yeah, I mean, that's great recruiting tool.
Yeah,
I mean,
yes,
and I think that's one of the things that changed, and we've talked to a few of your peers about that. When you walk into a house now, people know the West Coast Conference. You don't have to explain who's in it and what it's all about.
Right. Well, there's no question that Mark Few and what Gonzaga's done has done that. You know, we would go into homes and they said, oh, yeah, that's Gonzaga's conference. We've got to change that as well. You know what I mean? The fact that it's a really good league. But no question, it does have a national name, the West Coast Conference. We can go into places. We recruit nationally, and we get kids from New Jersey, we got kids from New York, we got kids from Texas. The reason we were able to do that, a lot of that is ESPN. You know what I mean? They want to be on television.
Yeah,
they want to be seen.
There was a time when you said USF, people knew.
No
now
question.
you say USF, you might wind up with people in South Florida.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah. And there's no question about that. We are trying to change that. And, the University of San Francisco, we got an unbelievable tradition here, and we're doing some really great things, so we're excited about it.
All right, a couple more guys that you mentioned, but we'll talk a little bit more about him. Angelo Calario, you were telling me when we talked a couple weeks ago that this guy's playing with renewed confidence, just a different player than he was.
He really is, really bouncing the ball. You know, I think last year he struggled to shoot the basketball, and he had to become a better guy off the bounce. This is the first summer he's really been healthy. He's always had little nagging injuries, even some surgeries going into the offseason. So he's got much more athletic than he's been in the past. Jumping off 1 foot, jumping off 2. He had a nice flush the other day in practice. I was like, where did that come from? You know what I mean? It was on somebody, which surprised me. So he's definitely playing at a higher level, and he knows. I mean, he's got a great knack. You've seen him. He's got a great knack for getting under guys' skins and making winning plays.
He can stroke it, too.
He can shoot it. He can definitely shoot it.
The other guy that I just love, and you touched upon him a little bit earlier, is your Texas guy, and that's Cody Doolin. Coach's kid. Looks like he was born in a gym.
He's just so much fun to coach. I mean, he really is. He's more aggressive this year. Last year, he beat himself up for every mistake he would make. He's letting things go now, and he understands how much confidence I have in him. More aggressive shooting the basketball, making plays. He's got a great feel, and it just gets better. He lives in the gym. So it's a lot of fun for me to coach him, all of our guys, but obviously Cody, for us to put as much pressure as we put on him when Dama went down, he's really taken it and turned it and benefited so much from that year. And in the spring and summer, he's been great.
Rex, you're a front runner now. All you have to do is go out and win games.
Front runner picked fourth. How can you be a front runner and be picked fourth?
Well, look at the three teams that
They're
picked
pretty
ahead
good.
of you, you
They're
know?
pretty good.
I mean,
They're
this is a
pretty
heck
good.
of a conference.
Yeah,
That's Rex
yeah.
Waldron, head coach at USF. We turn our attention now to the Santa Clara Broncos, and with me another old friend, Kerry Keating. Kerry, I met him in Tulsa. I think I met you in Tulsa, right?
You and Dan have been doing a Fox game.
That's right.
About 10 years ago now.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then to UCLA, and now here he is, the head coach of Santa Clara, and coming off a 24-14 win and a postseason tournament victory, and that's what you strive for, I guess.
Yeah, our guys did a great job at the end of the year, really figuring out how to win. We went through some growing pains earlier in the year before the calendar turned into the conference season, and had some good opportunities. Obviously, had the big win at home against Gonzaga that kind of stretched into February, and weren't able to put it together in New Orleans, but we're fortunate enough to get a postseason bid and made the most of it, and the guys did a great job.
Yeah, I was going to say, not only made the most of it, but every coach, you want to play as many games as you can, because really what that is you're playing the first games of next year.
Absolutely. We told the guys there's only 4 teams are going to finish on a winning note, 4 champions. To be one of them is pretty special.
Absolutely. Now you come to this year, and right out of the chute, you lose arguably your best player.
Yeah.
But you've recovered from that.
Mark was playing so well at the end of last year and let that carry into the summer and certainly into our earlier practices, our trip to Canada. Our team has done a good job of responding, knowing there's not much we can do about it except take advantage of the opportunities that are there for younger guys to step into the role. The key being they're younger guys. Right. We got 7 freshmen and 4 of them trying to get his minutes now, so it's going to test our patience a little bit.
I'll ask this question from Noah at Facebook because it's along the same lines as what we were just talking about regarding Mark Trasolini. Losing him for the year, do you think he'll be back and be the same player next year after a full year without playing?
Yeah, it's tough. You never know after an ACL injury. I know his rehab has started, and the progress is good. His surgery, we were able to get it done the next week, and not all the times you can do that. The swelling wasn't too bad. He's positive. He's recovered mentally a little bit to understand where he's at. He's been at every practice. He's been vocal. He's going to take advantage of the opportunity to be a coach and learn a little bit at this latest stage is something that's unique. And hopefully he comes back mentally ready, and obviously physically we'll find out in the spring.
All right, so that's the downside. Let's talk about the good side. And the cupboard is not bare at Santa Clara. People still expecting big things from you.
Well, because you're guards. And anytime you have strong guards, you obviously have a chance in college basketball. It's a guard-driven game for the most part, even though a guy like Mark can be an impact-type player. I think our guards, obviously, with Kevin being the highlight guy, and Evan has really elevated his game into the summer, needed to add weight and did. Our whole team did a great job. And then we have young guards behind them, a redshirt freshman in Julian Clark, an experienced guard forward in Ray Cowles, and 2 young freshman guards in Denzel Johnson and Brandon Clark that have really embraced the competition and shown a little something. So our competition's healthy, our depth is good. Now it's a matter of figuring out how many guys are going to play.
You've been around this game your whole life, and this is something we've talked to a lot of the coaches here today about, and that is that freshmen just seem so much more ready to play now. Here you're talking about a couple of freshmen. Obviously, they're going to get big minutes for you, but these kids can play.
They play a lot coming in. The AAU culture has changed how many games these kids play, and against different age groups, a lot of times the better kids play up when they're 14 and 15 years old, so they're playing against older players, so they lose a little bit of that fear factor when they're freshmen in college. But there is an adjustment, though. There's a speed of the game that has to come to them that not a lot of them can make that quick, but the guys that do are guys that are able to play. And we've been fortunate to have guys in the past, so good guys to learn from in terms of making the freshman adjustment.
No question. And you, a good guy to learn from, too. Here's a question. This will be right in your wheelhouse, I think. It comes from Andy via Twitter, and he says, how impactful is connecting on your Twitter or digital for your recruiting? I mean, that's a sign of the times, isn't it?
It started for me when instant messaging precluded Twitter and the Facebook connection. We actually had a player, Malcolm Lee, commit via instant messaging on AOL, and at the time was allowable.
Did Ben know how to use that?
No, and we got it through my account, but I brought it into Ben. He didn't even know. All he cared about was that Malcolm came. But I thought it was a sign of things to come in terms of connectivity and communication instead of the tedious nature of writing all the letters. And you still do that for the most part, but the connection through the social media now is just completely blown up. And obviously here doing our media day here at YouTube of all places and living in Silicon Valley and understanding the impact here in Northern California, but now worldwide, it's really been good for our recruiting. It's really helped our recruiting. I think it's a sign of things to come. And now I think today they just allowed unlimited texting and messaging and phone calls to kids. So things are starting to change towards
almost a throwback and even more because of the new media.
Well, because you have more ways to connect with them now, and then just picking up the phone and dialing the phone now. Now you pick it up, you're on their phones, they're carrying their computers around with them.
Well, and and the whole process, as long as we're on the subject, the whole process has changed so much too. I mean, you could basically go on YouTube where we are right now and watch any kid that you're talking about play in any game.
And kids do that. Kids post videos, and teams post videos, and high school coaches and AU coaches. So it can be helpful if you utilize and embrace them. Our staff has certainly done that.
All right, I want to go back to what we were talking about a little bit earlier. You're talking about some of the freshmen playing, and I think the simple fact is, especially at Santa Clara, and with your philosophy, which is run the ball, get it up and down the floor, you got to go with a bigger rotation.
Yeah.
Your team has averaged 80 points a game. I think there wasn't a game last year, as I recall, that you didn't score 80 in. So that, I assume, is still the philosophy, and if you're going to do that, you better have a pretty long rotation.
Well, we need to have some depth, and I think we still have that even without Mark. And like I said, our guard rotation, our depth is good right now, whether the freshmen don't hit the wall early. You know, you have 7 freshmen, they're going to hit a wall, hopefully not all together. And we've been fortunate to cultivate our freshmen through December into January and be ready for the conference season. So, no, we're gonna find out really quickly what we're made of out in Anaheim.
Tell me about the preseason schedule.
Yeah, we take our team to, in Anaheim for the 76 Classic. I know Eric had some success in that in the past at Portland, had a chance to play West Virginia, Butler, UCLA. This year we'll have New Mexico in the first round, arguably the best team on paper in the tournament. So we get challenged right out of the gate. Washington State, Oklahoma looms second round. Other side of the bracket, Villanova, Boston College, St. Louis, Riverside. We'll have a chance to return our game to Washington State in December. And 2 really tough games, probably the toughest stretch before that, with at Santa Barbara and San Jose State, the local rivalry postseason team, with George had his team in last year, right out of the gate in the first week of the season in November. So we're definitely going to get challenged and anticipated that challenge with the guys we have back. And I think our young guys will find out pretty soon what college basketball is all about.
That Pullman trip in December is great fun.
I know. Well, you've been at those games
many
at
times,
UCLA.
many more times than I care to remember.
Oh,
to
yeah.
tell you the truth. We'll take this one. Connor on Twitter, he says, "How is big man Rob Garrett doing in his transition thus far?"
He's had more of an impact on our team off the court than on the court. Obviously, we haven't played yet. It's easy to be recognized when you're 7 foot and 255 as soon as you step foot on campus. I've been around a lot of guys, obviously at a high level, a lot of big guys. Been really fortunate. He's probably one of the best I've ever had from an attitude standpoint. He's got such a high ceiling to improve because he wants to get better. And obviously, with the graduation after this year of Rob Sacre, and now that Eric's guys have all kind of moved on, look for him to be the heir apparent, to be the biggest guy in the conference, and has really embraced the role and really wants to get better. He's really a great kid. I mean, he's a kid that I look forward to guys like you meet him, because I think he'll have an impact on you. You'll realize what type of kid he is.
Well, it's interesting. There's a legacy of big guys at Santa Clara.
Well, Dennis Autry and Ken Sears, of course, and Bud Ogden, who's been around.
Yeah.
Bud has been a great supporter of our program and been around in practices, and he had a chance to see him in the summer and really appreciated him. And I think Rob will be no different. Of course, the most recent one in John Bryant. I think Rob is a different type of player than any of those guys. Especially now, like we mentioned, this day and age, everybody knows who each other are. And we had to recruit against some pretty tough schools in the Pac-10 to get him. So we're excited about his potential and lucky to have him.
Your team is picked 5th in the preseason poll by the coaches, and that's nothing to be embarrassed about here, because there's some pretty darn good teams who picked ahead of you.
Well, there's a lot of teams on our league with returning talent and also bringing in talent. Of course, the coaches have done a great job. I think anyone in this conference could be anyone at any time. I think we proved that last year, and I think you're going to see a lot more of that this year. And with the addition of BYU, making the conference even tougher from a competition standpoint. But all the teams expect to have good seasons. I don't think anyone expects to finish last. I know the preseason polls are for the fans and the media and the alumni. For us coaches, maybe you use a little bit for cannon fodder for your motivation for your team, but expect a great season from our conference top to bottom.
Great, as good as I've ever seen this conference, and like both of us have been around it for a little bit of time. So is the bottom line, and we've talked to other coaches about this too, you got to win at home, obviously, and
Sure.
just get what you can get on the road.
Well, the old adage is that you try to win them all at home and split the road games. Right. I think 12-4 would be probably right at the top of this conference, but we're all undefeated and winless at this point, so it's all prognostication from here. But home base is really important. It's important to defend your home turf, and the teams that usually win more home games are going to be in line to win and be at the top of the conference.
Once again, the subject that we've talked to all your peers about too, and that's recruiting in the West Coast Conference now, and it's got to be a lot easier than it was when you first walked in the door at Santa Clara. Just because, first of all, because of the television exposure that the conference is getting, and secondly, just with the balance in the conference, there's some really good teams in this conference.
Well, the success of it, and I think you're in a position now in this conference where the expectation from the coaches is that we're going to have 2 or 3 or maybe 4 teams right there for a chance to have a bid into the NCAA tournament. Certainly last year, including BYU, 6 of our 9 making the postseason. The expectation is to try to duplicate that or increase on that. And we can only get better as we, improve our product on an individual basis, as a conference basis. We've certainly done that. And It's going to be an exciting year. It may not be as exciting for coaches to go up against each other, certainly to watch and to broadcast and to attend. These games are going to be a lot of fun, and I think really help the teams when they do get to the postseason have a chance to have success.
I got the easy job. I do the game, say where are we going to eat. You got to go home and watch it. Yeah.
Again.
Kerry,
Yeah.
thanks so much.
Thank you.
Be a dad too. Oh, by the way.
Again, yeah.
I have. I was in a little town called Franklin. It's on a lake. It was on a lake. We're here. We're just chatting amongst ourselves. This is Max Good. You know him. He's the head coach at Loyola Marymount. And Max, this is that great time of year. Everybody's undefeated. Everybody's forgotten about what happened last year. I don't think anybody wanted to forget about it, probably more than you did. But right now, hope springs eternal.
Well, I haven't forgotten about last year, and we're attacking this year with a vengeance because what happened last year was disastrous and inexcusable despite some of the things that happened to us. But we didn't close out close games. You know, we were in several games. All it would have taken was 5 or 6 games difference, and we'd at least have a winning season. And for us not to have a winning season last year is totally unacceptable.
It was really a case of Murphy's Law, though. What could go wrong did go wrong. And, hey, get it all out of your system last year, I would think.
Well, talking about Murphy's Law, again, that's making excuses. And nobody wants to hear that. We don't. The players don't. The fans don't. You know, no matter what happens, they expect you to, you know, to be representative and competitive. And while we were competitive, we couldn't finish games off last year like we should have.
All right. We're taking questions from viewers out there who are watching. They will ask us either by way of Twitter or by way of Facebook. And so this comes from Robert on Facebook. He says, if the Lions' first game was tonight, who would start at the 5 and why?
Probably Godwin Okonji, because he's done the best job defensively, and we've had 2 scrimmages and where we've actually we've kept stats, and he's averaged I think either 15 or 16 rebounds per scrimmage. Now that's against ourselves, obviously. That doesn't necessarily translate to what he would do against an outside competitive team. But he finished the season starting for us last year, and frankly, he's the healthiest of all our inside players right now. You
do have 13 Letterman coming back, and I suppose that could be good news or bad news. What is it in this case?
No, it's good news. It's good news. You know, we've got some good, capable players back that are healthy now, and I'm glad to have each and every one of them.
You know, and that's the other thing, too. You say you can't look back and you don't want to rehash last year. But again, you had people hurt, you had people banged up. I mean, everything that could go wrong did, and that was early in the year, so you could never really establish a time.
Well, but I didn't deal well with that, you know, and that's my job to deal with that and not to get consumed by it. And frankly, I did, and that's, that goes against coaching values and it just isn't the way. I didn't deal with it in an acceptable way at all.
All right, well, you got to have one guy who's really your bell cow, if you will, and that I would expect is Drew Viney. It's a solid basketball player.
Well, I think in this league you're probably going to need 2 or 3, but
maybe.
You're right. Drew Viney, he missed 7 or 8 games with migraines last year, and when he did play, he was, I think, second leading scorer in our league and averaged about 23 a game our last 5 games when he got over the bout of migraines. And you know, he's a guy that can carry you, you know, when he's totally healthy, and he's a sneaky rebounder. People talk about his ability to shoot outside and make plays in and outside, but he also does, you know, he averages over 7 rebounds a game since he's been there, and is a surprisingly good shot blocker, as a secondary shot blocker, not on the ball, but as a secondary shot blocker. He's pretty darn good.
You say, and it's true, you probably do have to have 2 or 3 pretty good bodies to be competitive in this league, especially this year. But you also have a guy named Anthony Ireland, who's all freshman last year and can play a little bit.
You know, he can play a lot. He came out of the tough New England Prep School League, and he's, which is a very competitive league. It's probably the best sub-college basketball in the country and better than junior college basketball. And he was a first-team all-conference player, and the rest of the players on that team went either to the ACC or Big East, for example. And we were very, very fortunate to get him early, because if he had been around late, you know, it might have been a lot tougher to get him.
All right. Well, let's, along those lines, and talking about recruiting, you touch on it. This from Sean via Twitter. Do you feel positive media exposure is still trending upward, and is it helping you recruit outside the West Coast Conference states?
Well, yeah, I think so. Our recruiting bases are going to be the New England prep schools. Los Angeles, obviously, first and foremost, has got to be our primary recruiting area. And then to get bigs that want to play inside, you know, we've gotten some kids from overseas because, frankly, a lot of American kids don't want to play in the low post. They want to be pick and pop guys. And I've always said that Spud Webb and Magic Johnson kind of screwed the game up a little bit. Spud got all the little guys wanting to dunk, and Magic got all the big guys dribbling between their legs, you know. I think that's still the case. A lot of guys with size and bulk don't necessarily want to play inside and put a hard hat on.
Call me nut, but I'd probably take Spud or Magic. I would think you probably would.
I'd take half of either one of them.
Half a Spud is awful small.
Yeah, I'd still take it.
Let's talk about this conference in general. I mean, it's a bear, top to bottom. It's as good as I've ever seen it.
Well, I haven't been around. I'm new to the West Coast. I spent a couple of years at UNLV, but I can't imagine it being any tougher. BYU just does nothing but make it tougher. But the teams that were aside from BYU, and you look at all the teams in this league, there's tremendous amount of depth, tremendous amount of talent, and every game at home is tough, let alone, obviously going on the road, they'll all test you. You can't win with your B-plus game.
Yeah.
You got to have at least an A- game to have even any kind of shot.
I think that's a fact. There is, however, we talked to Rex Walters about this before, there's a pretty good legacy at Loyola. I mean, obviously the Paul Westphal teams were really special, and they put that place on the map. And I'm sure that's something, A, you want to conjure up, and B, you use as a recruiting tool.
Well, we've got commitments out of 3 kids early, and we can't comment on them, but, they're all kids that we wanted very badly, and we think they fill, they're the kind of players that can be highly competitive in this conference. And but we want to build our own legacy. We were kind of on our way with the 18 wins, but then and I'll take responsibility. I stubbed my toe badly last year, and all it would have taken was 5 or 6 games, and we lost 10 games by 34 points.
Yeah, I think it's all about expectations. And
right.
maybe, there were a lot of expectations last year, and maybe put undue pressure on the kids. Not from you, but just in general.
Well, whatever happened, my dad always said people who live in the past have no present, no future. But I don't always live up to that because, I'm having a hard time getting it out of my system, and I got to be better at turn the page, move on.
Well, and it's certainly the time to do that. Incidentally, I had Paul Westhead, not Paul Westphal. Jeremy via Twitter says, talk about Anthony Ireland. How much better can he get this year?
Well, so far in our 2 scrimmages, he's faster horizontally, and he's more explosive vertically, and he's been a much better shooter. I know we scrimmaged yesterday. He had 8 threes in an inner squad, and we did a 40-minute scrimmage. And he had 30-some points on only 12 shots. Now, that's way too many for a point guard. But with Drew out now, he's got to assume a little bit more of a scorer's mentality. But I'm not totally comfortable with the point guard being the leading scorer. He's got to find a way to get the ball to other guys. But he did have 8 assists along with his points yesterday. And 12 shots, that's not exorbitant.
No, not at all. And let's talk a little bit, too. There was one bright spot last year, too, and that is you boarded pretty well. This team boarded pretty well last year.
We did it a little bit by committee, and we've got a sophomore redshirt at Quincy Lawson from Orange County that is, so far he's been the surprise of our season, and he's a guy who is totally bought into not doing anything he can't do. He just runs the lane hard, and he's scoring in transition, and he's jumping in passing lanes, and he's really a terrific athlete. Was a 6'7", 6'8" high jumper in high school, and he's figured out, like a lot of young people don't, sometimes less is more. The less you try to do, the more you get done, and he's been the surprise for us so far this year.
Well, what's your philosophy about just what type of game? Do you like to play a half-court game? Do you want to push the ball up and down the floor, or somewhere in between?
Skip Prosser was a dear friend of mine at Wake Forest, and we used to talk all the time. The older I get, the faster I want to play. And that isn't necessarily the case. A lot of times as guys get older, they get more conservative. And really, I want to blister it up the floor as fast as we can, and I want to play pressure defense. We want to play offensive offense and offensive defense, but we don't want to play crazy, wild, undisciplined defense either, because that leads to too many easy baskets. And we don't want to jerk it out of the net every time and have to try to hit a 3 to offset their 2, or to go one up on that. But no, we want to play very aggressively. Very aggressively.
That seems to be the rule rather than the exception. Kerry wants to play that way. Mark likes to play that way. Even at BYU, they want to play an up and down game. Rex likes to play an up and down game. That's what you're going to be seeing almost night in and night out.
Yeah, we certainly, we definitely do. I know at prep school we averaged over 110 a game, but I have terrific players there. I had guys that have over a dozen of them, end up playing in the NBA, so you could do that, although it was a very tough league. But no, we want to play as fast as we can, and I think it helps you in recruiting. And it's hard to score 5-on-5. It's almost, I mean, if you're having to rely on making a basket 5-on-5 consistently, that's very hard to do with the scouting and with the amount of information that's available to you. And there aren't many secrets, or you're not pulling one over on anybody much anymore.
It's a new year. Hope springs eternal. I wish you
All right.
well, Max.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks. We come now to the anchor man, and he is Randy Bennett, head coach at St. Mary's. Coming off a 25-game season last year, and no reason to think that won't happen again. Easy for me to say, right?
Yeah, really easy for you to say. I'm not sure all those opponents are so willing to give those 25 up again. But no, we return a lot of players from last year's team, and we have a chance to have a good year. So.
Yeah, I think I talked just about some of the players who we're going to see again, and a lot of familiar faces, of course, a couple of all-conference players. So, there's good reason for optimism in Moraga.
Right.
Talk to us about some of the guys.
Oh, we returned 4 of our 5 stars. We have to replace McConnell, who Player of the Year. I've told people the toughest thing to replace about him is his leadership. He'd been in our program. He started out as a guy that was didn't play much and ended up being a guy that's Player of the Year. So we have to do that. I think Matt Delvedova will help there, just leadership-wise. He's a tremendous leader, and I think Rob Jones can help there, as well as our other 2 seniors, Kent Walker and Clint Steindl. So that's leadership's important for every team. I think it's certainly important in our program. So we need to get that covered. Just depth-wise, we should be better. We have a better low post presence. Last year I think we were playing with 6'8", 235-pound guys at the center, which then Rob Jones was 6'6", 6'5", guy at the foreman. So we were always downsized. This year we can play big, and I think our depth at the 5 spot's much better, which will make our depth at the 4 better. And we return most of those guards other than McConnell. So I like our depth, our experience. I like our size.
You know, the other thing I think that kind of typifies your team and has become a character trait at St. Mary's, and that's toughness. And that maybe started with McConnell. He was a tough-nosed guy. And now it carries on. Delvedova is a guy who's going to stick his nose in there. He's going to get dirty. And I think Jones, that could be said of him, too. And I think that kind of is the hallmark of this basketball team.
Well, I think it is of any good team in college basketball. You better have some toughness. And, yeah, I think we have for a while. And I think it's part of our culture and our program, and we hang our hat on that as well as some other things. But we have some tough guys. I think that should not be this team's Achilles heel. We have enough physical, strong bodies that are pretty mentally tough and have been through the wars that I think we should have a presence about us as far as toughness.
I think you're down to 4 Aussies now, and I know you lose one this year. It's time to get another round-trip ticket, isn't it?
Actually, we still have 5.
Okay, I'm sorry.
We brought a transfer.
I lost my head.
Yeah, we met the quota. We're at 5 still. We have one sitting out. Matt Hodgson transferred in from Southern Utah. He's a 6'11" kid. Has a chance to be a good player for us down the road. So we're okay. We still have our Qantas frequent flyer points. We're good.
How's it working in terms of recruiting? I mean, I'm assuming you do still recruit in the United States, right?
Yeah, Bay Area.
Bay Area. Okay.
Bay Area.
But when you go into a home now, and you mentioned St. Mary's, obviously there's a little bit of a different reaction now than there might have been 4 or 5 years ago.
Yes, the success that our teams have had over the years has helped. It's opened some doors that probably wouldn't have been open before. And you know what? I think our conferences, the visibility of our games within our conference and some of the other teams in our conference have helped us that way. I think our conference is perceived at a higher level than it was probably when we first entered the conference. And we've helped on that, and so have some other teams. And the addition of BYU is going to help on that. And we're one of the top conferences in the West and one of the, top 8 or 9 in the country.
Yeah,
so.
I think maybe even better than that. It used to be not that long ago where you get up in the morning and think, boy, Gonzaga, I got to play Gonzaga at some point here. Now you wake up in the morning and say, I got to play Gonzaga, I got to play BYU, Rex has got to go in at USF, I got to play Kerry down at Santa Clara. I mean, there are not too many gimmies in this conference anymore.
No, the league's up, and the teams you just mentioned, they should have really good years also. It'll be interesting because there's a lot of teams that are set up to have a good year, and it doesn't always go that way, but these teams, it starts with having experienced, good players, and there's a lot of teams in our league that have that this year. And then you throw in BYU in the mix, and there's one that's been a top 25 team last 5 years. So it's I don't see there's no easy ones on that schedule once conference hits.
Well, and even Eric's kind of laying in the weeds. He's sitting back here. He's kind of laying in the weeds. He's got a lot of guys like himself, a lot of overachieving kind of guys. And Max lost a whole bunch of games because of not having available bodies. He's got it back there now. So I think we talk about, the teams that we expect are going to do well, but there's a couple of other teams that might be added to that list.
Yes, like I said, I don't see any easy ones. I know Portland.